Domestic abuse against men. Now, this is obviously the main topic I talk about in my books and on my YouTube channel, but I thought what I would do is actually make a bit of an overview video. So instead of the videos I've made in the past, which focus on specific areas, I'd like to talk about kind of everything surrounding domestic abuse against men. Now, this is not a scripted video. I haven't pre-planned this. I thought what I would do is just talk about it the way I talk when I go give talks to organizations or run workshops. So more from an overall point of view, looking at various different aspects. So we'll cover things around like the types of abuse men endure, things that get done to them, what happens when they try and leave, what's the state of support services, things like that. So it'll be a bit of a general overview video, but I thought it'd be very useful for anyone new finding my channel, but also people who want to have a easy to digest, shorter, long form video. So it's not going to be a 2-hour video, but it'll give you a good bit of information. And for people first learning about this topic, it'll be a good entry point. So with that being said, let's start. One thing I will say before we begin actually is that in the description of the video will be links to everything. So if you're looking for resources, information, support organizations, just have a look in the description of the video. You'll find all of that there. Great. So first thing, I think let's talk about a prevalent thing when it comes to domestic abuse against men. A lot of men don't actually realize they're being abused because it's not physical. So when we talk about domestic abuse, I look at the two different terms that people use. There's domestic abuse and there's domestic violence. Now, I very much take domestic violence as the physical side of abuse, but there is a lot more to domestic abuse than just hitting. So we can look at all the different types of abuse, like emotional abuse, mental abuse, financial abuse, sexual abuse. There's loads of different types, and the problem is, as guys in particular, we don't recognize those signs. So we think, okay, I'm being told off a lot, I'm henpecked, or oh, maybe there's something wrong with me, or because mental abuse is designed to make you think differently and emotional abuse is designed to make you feel differently, you end up feeling or thinking a certain way that maybe you're to blame or something like that. So there's a big differentiator understanding the types of abuse first. Obviously, physical abuse is, it's quite straightforward in terms of the hitting, but there's also other aspects to that as well, such as, breaking things, doing physical things like breaking your phone, breaking your laptop, throwing things, smashing things. That is physical. Same when it comes to sexual abuse. It's not just things being done to you. It's maybe sex being withheld. It's sexual talk that makes you feel uncomfortable, or sex as a threat that they're going to go and sleep with someone else. So there's lots of things. I do discuss all of this in my books in detail, and I have made a few videos discussing kind of the aspects of the types of abuse in detail. So I'm not going to go into full level, but I just wanted to get that idea out there that it's not just hitting. There are various different types of abuse. Now, within those types of abuse, we have what are called the tools and techniques of the abuser. So they will use various mechanisms to abuse you, and it doesn't start straight away. So I always say, whenever I give a talk, you don't go on a first date with someone and you sit down and they punch you in the face, because you would never go on a second date with them because there's not that emotional attachment. It wouldn't happen. So what they do is they employ tools like love bombing to get you into that state that they can start doing more and more tools and up the game a bit. So love bombing is when they shower you with affection, absolutely everything. This feels like you've met the love of your life. This is the best thing that ever happened to you. They seem absolutely perfect. They're paying you attention. They message you a lot. They get you gifts. Everything you say, they kind of mirror back to you. So, if it's your favorite film, they'll have the same favorite film, or they'll love, whatever it might be. They'll just mirror it back at you. They'll do a lot of future faking. So they'll talk about like, how are you going to do this in the future together, and how are you going to do that? And really paint this beautiful life picture for you to lure you in with love bombing. Now, all that does is just, obviously causes chemical releases, but it accelerates that bond so that they can actually then move on to further steps. And things that generally come after that are things like isolation, where they try to isolate you from your family and friends, get you to see them less. And that's usually under the guise of something like, oh, well, of course we're in a relationship now, so of course you'll see me more and your friends and family less. But yes, but there is a degree, and they're trying to isolate you away from your support structure. There are various other tools that they will use throughout the abusive relationship, like gaslighting, trying to make you think that you doubt yourself, your brain's not working properly. They'll use things like blame shifting, like financial control is a big thing, where they will try and control your finances. So there's various tools, and again, they're in my books, they're in other videos, not going to go into them in detail, but there's a lot of things there that causes this trauma bond to form and paves the way for an escalating pattern of behavior. So with abusers, you'll always find they escalate. If they hit you once, you'll find the next time they'll hit you a few times, or it'll become more frequent, or the things they do, the way they talk to you. As soon as they realize they can get away with something, they kind of do more and more and more and more and more. So types of abuse and tools and techniques are very important to understand when you're in an abusive relationship, if you're trying to help someone in an abusive relationship, but also once you've got out of that abusive relationship, to look back and start actually healing from it. Because I found when I was writing my first book and I was going through all of these and doing the research in detail around them, it enabled me to look back on things that had happened and say, okay, I remember blaming myself for that, but actually that was this tool that she was using. So I don't need to have shame for that, or I don't need to blame myself for that. So it is a really good exercise worth doing, is understanding those tools and techniques and the types of abuse, and then have a look back at your abusive relationship with that in mind and see what it does for you. So I think a big thing we need to talk about is obviously, what is it like for a man in an abusive relationship? Because abusive relationships are terrible for everyone, right? No one should be abused. Women face the same types of abuse and the same tools and techniques. But there is this kind of layer and differentiator when you're a man, where there is a massive societal stigma that men do not get abused, men can take care of themselves. You'll hear people saying things like, oh, why don't you just hit her back? Which is bad advice. I'll get into that in a minute. But, there's this added layer. Added on that, then there's also our kind of pride as men, where we should be able to take care of ourselves. We feel it's embarrassing, it's shameful, we don't want to come forward. Then add on that there are far fewer support organisations and resources dedicated to men around the world, far less funding from governments to organisations that support men. So not only is there extra shame, stigma, all of these things wrapped around it, but there is also less places to go as well. So there are places there, and actually in the description we'll put a list of all resources globally that you can contact if this is happening to you or someone you know. But then there's the other side of it, that being a man gets used against you. So, anyone watching this video is probably very well aware of the Johnny Depp Amber Heard case, where, they played that sound clip from her saying, go tell the world, Johnny, that I, a man, am a victim of domestic abuse. And that was said to me, that was said to every single guy victim I know, and I've spoken to, where, they'll say, their abuser will say to them, if you tell the police or if you tell anyone, I'll say it was you, and you're a man, so they'll blame you. And, they're not wrong. They will blame you, because that is the way the system is designed. But there are other things then as well. So things like false allegations. So they will, obviously say that, but they could say other things as well. They could say there was sexual abuse or anything like that. Add on to that, then there's another thing if you have children, where there's parental alienation, because, in 93% of cases, I think it is, women get awarded custody of the child. It's very difficult for a man to get awarded sole custody, and generally, a guy will end up with maybe every second weekend or something like that. So, or in some cases 50-50 if they're lucky. So there's kind of these added layers if you're a guy. And then obviously going through all of that, when there's false allegations or blaming going on or parental alienation, you're going to court for all these hearings. The court staff are all trained in this whole system that, women are victims, males are perpetrators. So when they're looking at you, they're thinking, well, this guy must be the abuser. She's saying he is, because, that's what's happening. And therefore he must be. So there's all these kind of layers on top. Now, I will say, obviously that whole bit was very, negative and make you feel like, oh, what hope is there? All these things are going to happen. But there are things that are going to happen, and it's going to be a hard road to get out of that abusive relationship, and there's going to be a lot of fights, and there's going to be a lot of real negativity you have to deal with. But it is possible. There are plenty of things to do. The more you understand it, and the more you understand around all these topics like abuse, false allegations, parental alienation, the better prepared you are to go into it, the better prepared you are to help your solicitors if you have them, or yourself if you're representing yourself in court. The better you are to watch out for these kind of things and try and document them if they're happening, or try and make sure they don't happen. So education is key with all of these things. It's not going to stop it being horrible. It's not going to stop it being hard, but it will assist you. And there is light at the end of the tunnel. And when you're in it, and I know personally from, I was 10 years in an abusive relationship, 4 years post-separation abuse, going through all the courts and all of that. But when you're in it, you just feel like this is it for me. There's no better than this. My life can never get better than this. It's awful. But it can be. It just takes time. And as you start moving through, you start breaking through these kind of barriers where you start, forgiving yourself for a lot of things you were blaming yourself for, understanding things that were happening. You eventually get to the point that you realize, well, I don't actually have to forgive myself because there's nothing to forgive myself for. It's them. They are the abuser. They should shoulder 100% of the blame because they are someone who has deliberately chosen to do these things to you. So there is no blame to be had if you're an abuse victim, and that goes for men, that goes for women. It's abusers we need to start blaming. And domestic abuse is a very weird thing that, as a society, we tend to put shame and blame on the victims as opposed to on the abusers. We'll ask questions like, why didn't you just leave them? Or you must have liked it. You could have walked away at any point. Why didn't you fight back? So it is something to look out for to, if you're supporting someone going through this, don't put more shame and blame on them. They have enough of their own. So, try and support them rather than lay that on them. Now, back to something I mentioned just now and earlier with us, people will always say to guys, oh, why don't you just hit her back? And, I say the same thing, like, it's not right to hit anyone, first of all. So morally, they're hitting you. You don't want to be that kind of person, so you don't. But also, it's literally the worst thing you can do, because already there's a chance that if you call the police or go to the police, they're going to say, she's going to say, well, he's actually the abuser, he's a guy. If you actually hit her and they come and she's bruised and bleeding and they ask you, did you hit her? And you say yes, it's just going to be 100 times worse for you. So, morally not right, but also from a legal defense point of view, very not good. So don't do that. My best advice on this topic is just learn. There are plenty of resources. I've written 8 books on the topic. You can read any of those. I've covered domestic abuse, parental alienation, false allegations, misandry, healing, all those kind of things. But there are, not just my YouTube channel, there are plenty of people out there talking about this stuff. Unfortunately, a lot of it is focused and written for women, which is great that they get the support, but there is less stuff out there for men. So we need to try and share around what we can find. But there are good resources, YouTube, online. There's a good community on a lot of the social media talking about this kind of stuff. So, and I think people think that it's all guys who are watching this kind of thing, but actually in my line of work, most of the people who reach out to me for support is actually women trying to get support for a man in their life, whether it's their father, their brother, their son, whatever. So, this is for male victims and people trying to help them. So it's not just something that's for some people, it's actually something for everyone, because we should all be helping all victims of abuse, male or female. So, share this around. If people want to try and understand the kind of, it is basics, I've kind of talked a very high level here around things, but I think these areas, understanding types of abuse, the tools and techniques, the kind of extra layer that men have to deal with, and maybe looking at some resources afterwards of what help is available, is definitely a very good starting. Yeah, I think that's it for this. So, if you want to subscribe to my newsletter, I do send out a whole bunch of information monthly. So the link again will be in the description. But check out the links. There's lots of resources and support listed there. And yeah, just if you're in this situation, try to stay safe. If you're supporting someone and you need help, please reach out to myself or any of the support organizations listed. And just keep it easy and stay as safe as you can.